In this video, we're going to be exploring the roles of reproductive hormones. First of all, we're going to talk about the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, which are vital in the role of so many of the processes of homeostasis, but are also involved in releasing reproductive hormones and causing our reproductive organs to produce the hormones that they produce. So if you take a look right here inside the kind of the middle of the person's brain, right at the top of the brainstem, is the region that you find the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus is sometimes called the control center of the brain. What it does is it monitors changes, and we've mentioned it before, and as it detects changes, it will either release a hormone to respond to the change, or it'll trigger the pituitary gland to release a hormone that's going to control or monitor that change and make responses. So the pituitary gland is kind of looks like a pair of tonsils dangling from the hypothalamus. Hormonal control of reproduction begins in the hypothalamus, that control center, and it releases a hormone called GnRH, or gonadotropic releasing hormone, which acts on the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland releases two different gonadotropic hormones. One of them is called luteinizing hormone, and the other one is called follicle stimulating hormone. The names of those two hormones come from the female reproductive system, but both males and females release these hormones, and they have similar roles on each of the different reproductive organs. So, for instance, luteinizing hormone causes the release of a reproductive hormone from either the testes or the ovaries. So, if it's a female, luteinizing hormone will stimulate the release of estrogen and progesterone, and it will also cause the release of testosterone in males. And in the female, for follicle stimulating hormone, it will stimulate the production of eggs, whereas follicle stimulating hormone in males will stimulate the production of sperm. For the remainder of this video, we're going to be looking exclusively at the male reproductive system. The male reproductive system has two testes, right here, which produce the sperm. And then that sperm, as it's maturing, is stored in the epididymis, which is a set of coiled tubules. And then the epididymis releases that sperm into the vas deferens, which carries it all the way to the urethra. Along the way, there are different glands that produce specific secretions that contribute to the production of semen, which carries the sperm to the female and is released within the female to fertilize an egg. The role of the testes is to produce sperm and testosterone, and within the testes you find coiled seminiferous tubules, which produce the immature sperm. And again, these tubules and the coiling of these tubules increases surface area to allow for the production of a lot of sperm. Here is a cross-section through some of the seminiferous tubules, and sperm start to develop at the base of the tubule, so right here, and then as they mature, they migrate towards the lumen of the center of the tubule. And you can see here in the center there's the immature sperm. They've already started to form a tail. In between these cells that are dividing by mitosis and meiosis to produce sperm, we find these cells, which are called Sertoli cells. They're also sometimes called nurse cells because their job is to nourish and take care of the developing sperm. The epididymis that we looked at earlier is, again, coiled tubules to increase surface area, and their job is to store the sperm before it's released from the body. The vas deferens is that long tubule that connects the epididymis to the urethra, so its job is to carry sperm to the urethra. If a male has had a procedure known as a vasectomy completed, what happens is the vas deferens is severed to prevent the release of sperm from the body, so prevents them from being able to impregnate a female. The seminal vesicle is a gland that releases fructose into the semen, and if you think about it, sperm are highly streamlined cells. So they've released most of their cytoplasm, they've released most of their organelles, and basically they're streamlined to be able to get to the egg as quickly and as easily as possible. But by doing that, by streamlining themselves, they don't have food to carry along. So the seminal vesicle releases fructose into the semen to be food for the journey. The prostate gland releases a basic buffer to protect the sperm from the acidic environment of the female. So if you remember when we learned about the immune system, we have these lines of defense to protect invading organisms from entering our body. So that is a good thing to prevent invasion of organisms, but it also works to kill off sperm as well. So not necessarily a desired effect if you're trying to conceive. So the prostate gland creates a buffer to kind of neutralize that acid of the environment of the female in the vagina to protect the sperm and allow some of them at least to get to the egg. The Cowper's gland is another gland that releases a mucus solution, and this time it's to protect the sperm from the urethra within the male. Again, you don't want to get a urinary tract infection, so you are going to produce an acidic environment to prevent pathogens from invading, but then it could also harm the sperm. So the Cowper's gland releases mucus to protect the sperm from that acid. And then finally, the urethra is the tube that carries semen during ejaculation, and then it also carries urine during urination, so it has a double role. When we look at the hormonal control within male reproduction, there are three main hormones involved. First of all, FSH, which again, remember, is produced by the pituitary gland and released to the testes. Its job is to stimulate sperm production. Luteinizing hormone, or LH, also produced by the pituitary, stimulates the production of testosterone. Testosterone is the hormone that's produced in the testes, and it's released by interstitial cells found in between the seminiferous tubules within the testes, and its job is to stimulate spermatogenesis, or the production of sperm. So right now we're going to talk about spermatogenesis, so the production of sperm. So remember back to grade 11 biology, we learned about meiosis, or the production of gametes or sex cells. So that's what spermatogenesis is in the male. It's just a process of meiosis. Now, the thing that differs between males and females is that males produce millions of sperm a day because the cells within the seminiferous tubules maintain the ability to divide, first of all, by mitosis, and then those cells start dividing by meiosis. Whereas in females, they're born with a set number of cells that have already begun meiosis, and that set number is all the female will have to produce egg cells. And not all of those will actually go on to become egg cells too, which we'll learn about when we learn about the female reproductive system. So in males, spermatogenesis begins at puberty. So as soon as puberty is onset, spermatogenesis takes place daily until death. So it happens the remainder of the male's life. And within spermatogenesis, all four cells will become sperm through the process of meiosis. So the initial cell will divide, and those two cells will divide, and you'll end up with 4 sperm cells. Whereas we'll learn in females, only one of the 4 cells actually goes on to become an egg. So down here, there's a diagram of a sperm cell. So we all recognize the shape. We've seen sketches of sperm cells, but there are some parts that are worth noting. So one thing is, this is the head of the sperm. Within there's the nucleus, and that's what's going to give the DNA to the embryo. So half of the DNA within an embryo is from the father, and half of the DNA is from the mother. This part right here is the midpiece, and within here there's all kinds of mitochondria to allow for lots of energy and motion to get the sperm from the male all the way to the oviduct where fertilization will happen. Again, there's a flagellum or a tail right here, and that moves in a whip-like motion to move or propel the sperm forward. Once the sperm reaches the egg, there's actually a pretty reaction that happens to penetrate the surface of the egg, or almost like the shell of the egg. And that reaction actually has to happen not just from one sperm, but from a combined effort of sperm. So it's actually not the first sperm that reaches the egg that's able to fertilize the egg. It's actually the one that's there right at the moment where the other sperm have given up their lives to help penetrate that egg's surface. So in this part right here, this is called the acrosome, and there's actually a bunch of digestive enzymes in here that help break down that egg barrier. And after time, there'll be enough sperm that have performed this reaction that the egg is finally penetrable, and what will happen is the next sperm that comes along actually is the lucky one to fertilize the egg.